Good Friday morning, everybody. Thanks for checking into our latest TDR Trade to Black podcast. I am your host, Shad Dales. What a week it was. And a quick reminder, vote yes on 3. And I'm sure you all agree with that. Lots to talk about here today, including a lot of momentum building towards possibly an amendment towards the Farm Bill as more and more states look to ban intoxicated hemp products. Missouri and New Jersey, the latest as well. AOC thinks that Donald Trump is lying in a lot of ways, like a Hail Mary to say the least, pertaining to some of his recent responses towards the cannabis space as well. Dan from the Chart Guys is going to come in here this morning as well. Look at the recent price action and what we can anticipate going into next week. And even further, some of the things that we should notice and patterns we should notice heading into October and leading up closer to the November 5th election. So let's jump into it. Love Friday Morning Podcast. First up, Anthony Varell. Happy Friday morning. Good to see you.
How's it going?
I'm good. It's Friday. What a week.
It's yeah, it's nice. It's not actually raining. I think it's rained every day this week.
Yeah, we can get back to fundamentals as far as the business is concerned. I know we got a lot of comments from Wednesday's podcast because it was a very political show. So we will try to steer clear of that as much as possible. But at the end of the day, we aren't a political show. Sorry, I'm just adjusting my seat. And we get back to fundamentals of this business. Let's bring in friend of the podcast. We're going to bring him off the top. Let's bring back Guap here on a Friday. Good to see you.
Greetings, guys. Yes, here in North Carolina, all the outdoor grows are getting some natural irrigation. So it is sprinkling here.
Is it?
Yep.
What an opening. What was the
happy plants?
We were talking about before we started recording here today, but in Cherokee, North Carolina, the turnout at that dispensary was 4,000 people that were there on opening. That when was the actual official day that opened? Was it last Saturday?
Saturday, yep. And Dan, the chart man, who is coming up later in the podcast, pointed out and reminded us all that it is right at the entrance of the Smokies, very well visited national park. He said the most visited in the country, which I did not know. But you know, good spot. I know it's illegal to partake in national parks, but I'd be lying if I said that isn't one of the best places to do it. So
Smokey the Bear would not like you lighting up joints in the national park.
That's true, but you know, a 5-10 milligram edible and hiking to the top of a mountain ain't a bad time.
Sounds like fun, that's for sure. But somebody obviously did their due diligence when it came to timing and location, because when you say that on paper, it's the most visited national park in the country. You can get to understand that it's going to be a very lucrative one, and arguably could be one of the top grossing dispensary locations in the entire country if that's the case. But good to see it. Another example as to how the trains left the station. And I assume we'll probably see some sort of cannabis program within that state in due time when you see numbers like that, which is great. But it's Friday morning, Trade to Black, Into the Wire. Thanks for joining us here. And let's begin with obviously the hot topic that's just been surrounding this industry outside of obviously the debate, but hemp. And it appears the industry that the clock might hit midnight in the not so distant future as Missouri and New Jersey are the latest to ban intoxicated hemp products. This after news from last week involving California Governor Gavin Newsom, who announced the same stance in California. So, Anthony, times are changing. What's the latest you're hearing about the Farm Bill possibly being amended? Like, are you hearing that this could happen and happen soon?
I'm hearing the language is being floated. Obviously, we know how cannabis legislation ebbs and flows, gets recommended, then it gets taken out. The Farm Bill is looking at the most interesting thing is Chuck Schumer now is starting to talk about the Farm Bill needing to be done in lame duck due to the dairy cliff, which is a meritable cause for concern. The last thing that the administration wants incoming in January, whether it's Kamala Harris or it's Donald Trump, is dairy products going through the roof due to the subsidies and the dairy cliff inherent in the Farm Bill. I was talking to someone last night that's actually on the Hill right now. They were saying that it's looking like the emphasis on the Farm Bill for the lame duck might be heavily predicated on food. Cannabis language being included in there is yet to be determined. But if it does get included in there, the goal will be to redefine hemp as it stands within the Farm Bill right now. It's not going to be to ban synthetics, let's say bifurcate intoxicating hemp products. via D9 and the D8 and THC 0 and those substances, it's going to be to close the loophole and to redefine hemp as it is and bring it in with the cannabis industry on a state-by-state basis the way that it is, because THC is THC at the end of the day. Do I think that the bans that are being enacted in New Jersey, California, Missouri right now are the right way to do it, with, let's say, widespread bans with not a lot of emphasis on enforcement or how they're actually going to do it? No, that's probably not the right way to do it. But it's a starting point. These products need to be taken off the shelves in terms of THC 0, D8, a lot of the synthetics in vape form that you're seeing that are just not tested, regulated, or giving true transparency to consumers. There is a need and a space within the cannabis industry for low dose, naturally derived Delta-9 hemp products. The beverages, the gummies, all of that stuff. I think it's an amazing product for the Canna Curious. It's a great entry point to get people affiliated with cannabis, and it's definitely has its place within the industry. That being said, the regulations are going to set the tone if it's going to be an existential threat by re-rating intoxicating hemp products, or if they're going to be allowed some liberties, let's say, outside of what the state-run cannabis businesses are allowed to operate within.
So if and when this amendment does happen and interstate commerce goes away overnight, like what happens to a lot of these companies? That's what I'm curious.
They die.
Wow. So
cannabis, you got to look at the low dose THC products right now, and a lot of the hemp products, a lot of the good actors, they have centralized operations.
Yep.
They're being able to operate D2C online, and they're being able to operate with interstate commerce. So the business model works right now.
Yep.
They can ship, they can be distributed all over the country via the loophole in the Farm Bill, and that is it, that they are selling a legal and compliant product. If hemp gets redefined via the Farm Bill, and if hemp gets classified the same as traditional cannabis, it is, to my knowledge, that the interstate commerce will go away. Hemp companies will have to figure out how to operate around that. That's probably going to be very expensive from a CapEx perspective if you're going to have to then go into certain states. Obviously, companies like Curaleaf that have launched the Select brand, companies like Wana that have the affiliation with Acreage, they have traditional cannabis operations in major markets. I don't think it would be that difficult for them to manipulate their footprint and allow for the manufacturing of those products via the mandates of where they're actually available to sell them in the future, which is also yet to be determined. There's a lot of opacity around this and a lot of speculation, but the one thing that I have heard consistent is that the ultimate goal will be to redefine hemp as it stands within the Farm Bill.
All it takes is big alcohol and a dent in their sales for them to get involved. It's just unfortunate that, change is actually being made now, but who cares, I guess, who it's coming from. If it's from big alcohol and there are changes being made, then let's just see what happens.
It's not, I don't really think the right word's unfortunate, because look at all the companies that we support. Look at all the companies that we buy products from. If I buy a 10 milligram hemp derived gummy online, it's no different than me going and buying a THC gummy at Sunburn. The fact that Sunburn, Trulieve, Curaleaf, Verano, they're all selling analogous products from a molecular standpoint, as the THC is the same, yet they have to pay 280E, yet they have to operate within this confined box. Don't get me wrong, I'm a little bit biased here, but that's bullshit. It's complete bullshit. There needs to be a change. It either needs to be cannabis is let outside of the box and the gloves come off and they can operate within the same framework that, let's say, the intoxicating hemp derived products are operating in, which is never going to happen. Or you regulate hemp on a state-by-state basis and it falls in line under the purview of the state licensed cannabis businesses, which makes a lot more sense.
Wolfie writes, alcohol won't step in. Molson, Constellation tried and failed. Same with Altria.
Sure.
It's a super complicated issue, and I think it's
Yeah.
really important that we separate what we want, ideally, what can happen, like in terms of next steps and what's likely to happen, and try not to conflate all of those together like I see a lot of people online. Like if you have a hemp business, you're gonna advocate for that in your own self-interest. If you're a multi-state operator, you might be staying pretty quiet about all of this. So we have to keep all of that in mind in terms of like how we see it all playing out. I mean, what we want, maybe full descheduling, free market, let cannabis be sold as cannabis, let interstate commerce happen, let the best products rise to the top. Suddenly THC, you don't have to ban THC zero if there is a safe, regulated, delightful product for sale right next to it. It's going
But
to just
Adam,
work itself out. So yeah.
Adam from Cantrip, I think, said it best. And I mean, I didn't really look into this, so this might be anecdotal. But I mean, he understands the extraction processes around these hemp-derived synthetics pretty well. And from my understanding, the extraction processes that are used to make HHC, THC zero, some of the Delta 8 stuff, there are free radicals and heavy metals that come into the mix via these extraction methods, and then that can have adverse effects on consumers. So until the studies are done and until those processes are refined and there truly is safety within the products, those products have no business being on shelves.
Right. So I feel really, for the industry as a whole, the cannabis industry, having safe hemp-derived products in as many places as possible is a great way to get the can of Curious in Total Wine with a low-dose beverage, right? So that's what we want. Unfortunately, I think it's taken long. This took longer than I thought it would play out. The fact is, I never really believed the Farm Bill was written in such a way, oh, they dropped industrial. Mitch is in on it. They're all making money. That's a conspiracy theory. Maybe it's true. Maybe it's not.
No, that's true. That's true. I mean, Mitch McConnell was heavily invested in Gencana, which was a huge industrial hemp and CBD business that was coming online concurrent with the Farm Bill. And the reason why the loopholes in the Farm Bill are now coming to roost is the Farm Bill is a 5-year bill. It was written in 2018. It got extended in 2023. It now needs to be readdressed and completely overhauled going into 2025. It's coming, whether we want it or not. This is when it needed to happen, and this is when you can stop making arguments against it happening and stalling it, because now is the time to act on the framework that they put in place back in 2018.
Yeah. So now you have products that it's kind of like fuck around and find out, right? Like it's a section of the cannabis industry. It's a section of the cannabis industry that has good actors, and we know some of them. And the MSOs, in some cases, are some of them, right? They're getting into the hemp-derived market to get their brand out there. But there's been, especially some of the sources of money, the people that are working on some of these products, they're cutting corners and they're making a ton of money, to be honest with you.
Here's a question.
So it's not, this isn't born out of like, well, they're not playing by the rules and we should punish them. I think there is some of that floating out there, but I really feel like some of these state governments like California, like Missouri, New Jersey, they finally recognize that this is a health problem, and they're taking drastic steps to ban it for now, and then we'll figure it out, is what it sounds like.
Here's the thing too.
And that's
New
not
Jersey, New Jersey, Missouri, and California all have adult use cannabis markets. There's no reason to have intoxicating hemp products widespread throughout the state. Sure, redefining the Farm Bill and closing the loophole on intoxicating hemp products is actually going to decrease the accessibility of plant medicine in certain jurisdictions, which that is absolutely not a positive. That is a big negative. But there's going to be collateral damage putting the genie back in the bottle. Yeah. And hopefully that also forces those states to get with the times and get medical marijuana programs online within their jurisdictions for people that actually need the plant medicine.
I'd be curious to see how this industry would unfold, because if there's like hemp companies that are actually producing THCA and are operating within the legal framework, a lot of these companies are private. But I'd be curious, and not necessarily just a question for you guys, but for our audience out there, would you ever consider investing in some of these hemp companies? Because like I said, they're all private right now, and I really don't understand or don't know a lot of public companies that are in the space, but it
There
begs
aren't
the
any.
question. I know, that's just it. So, but
You
in the
can't
event,
invest. You can't invest in those assets with the potential existential crisis of the regulatory framework in the
yeah,
Farm Bill. I
yeah,
mean, that's playing with fire. I would invest across the board in all of the. I mean, so I haven't consumed a cannabis product this week from an actual dispensary. I've consumed low dose hemp derived products
yeah,
the entire week, and
yeah,
they're great.
yeah.
Beverages, gummies. I've got nothing but glowing reviews for all of the products that I've used. Would I invest in them with potential looming regulatory changes? Absolutely not. And
Hmm.
I love half the products. I would put money in all of the beverage companies that I've tried to date.
I bring
Gladly.
that up. I bring that up because go up, finish your thought. Sorry.
No, that was the
Oh,
end of my
okay.
thought.
I thought I cut you off. But pay, yeah, I bet they're making bank right now. It's a question I think that, yeah, it is. They found a loophole within the farm bill, and they're obviously taking advantage of it right now. But like you said, there's going to be some changes potentially made. So, like you said, Anthony, there could be a lot of these companies that basically are defunct after a lot of these changes do happen. But I'm sure that there are some that are ready for the change if it is amended. But at the end of the day, it's just, do we start to see more companies within that space potentially going to the public market? And I'd be curious to see from our viewers if that's something that you would consider as well. But a couple of things too. There were some comments. I think James wrote, "Are we covering High Tide on Monday evening?" Yes, we will on the Trade to Black podcast. We've actually reached out to Raj. He's going to be actually coming on the Trade to Black podcast. I don't have the calendar in front of me, but it's a Wednesday. I think it's October the 2nd. If whatever that Wednesday is of that week, that's when we will be interviewing Raj. And then as well, there was one other, Fred, the Village Farms. Is it filmed or edited and ready to drop? Fred, we filmed. We just found out close to 1 hour of footage, and 1 hour, it takes a long time to edit. So we're hoping probably within the next week. We're hoping to get some stuff out this week, but a lot of stuff you can imagine when you're on site. Just audio levels and all that sort of stuff needs to be prim and proper. So we're going through a lot of that production right now. But what we're going to probably do is aim to do 4 videos that are on 6 to 7 minutes in length. And we look to hopefully get that first interview out or video out at some point early to mid part of next week. But appreciate the patience and appreciate the follow up. I just want to give you an update on that. You will be very happy with what we produced there and what we learned. So, Guap, you said it before the podcast began that if you ask a question about hemp, you and Anthony could talk for a half an hour, and it's already 11:20, right?
Yeah.
All right, let's now switch to our second topic here on Into the Wire, Trade to Black podcast on a Friday morning, and shift to the industry news involving GTI and its first of its kind credit facility for the U.S. cannabis industry. Anthony, you tweeted that out the other day. You want to explain more of the details of the announcement and what it means with what I just outlined?
Yeah, I mean, Ben was retiring a $225 million debt maturity that I think was coming due in Q1 of 2025. What he did was he refinanced 150 million of it at a SOFR plus 5%, which is basically a floating rate based on the repo settlements. So that rate's going to be anywhere, let's say, between 9 and 11% on a floating basis. He's using $75 million of cash on the balance sheet to also pay down the remainder of that facility. And this is traditional bank financing. There's no warrants. There's no dilutive nature in this financing. This is tier one financing from probably the best tier one company in the space. It's just another testament to the strength of GTI, the interest in GTI. And he said that he's also going to be using this capital for strategic expansion. So with their 20th dispensary in Florida coming online this week, Amendment 3 potentially coming online after November. If it passes, I mean, I could see him going deeper into the state.
I do too.
I mean, this isn't a knock on him because I hear their product is elite in several other markets, but their product in Florida needs work. So I could also see them investing in indoor grow and or more sophisticated cultivation infrastructure as it relates to the state of Florida. fantastic announcement for GTI and just another step in the right direction for the cannabis industry as a whole. As a side note, TrueLeaf actually also secured financing from this bank a couple of years ago. I think it is $70 million facility.
Well, as Ben usually does on Twitter, he says so much in so little few of words, but the 250 replaces the 150 in a tweet that he put out actually yesterday. So, yeah, I brought it up the other day, and I'm curious to see, like, GTI, how do they enhance and develop and expand within that Florida market? Because, look, there's a lot of companies sitting in front of them as far as overall position and footprint, but you're talking about, arguably the biggest company in the entire space. So, I think there's a lot of change that's going to happen pertaining to that. But first things first, let's get a yes on 3. Hope Kim's watching that.
Yeah. That's the footprint size that matters, right? I mean, when we're talking about what institutions are looking for, this was another nice move. Balance sheet health matters. It will eventually. I'm not talking about stock price. I'm talking about what the institutions are looking for. This is a good move.
Well, and I think it's like, Anthony made a good point too. It's just like we're at this, we sometimes forget, like, the product in Illinois may not be the same product in Florida. It's the same company, but that's just the current conditions right now in the cannabis space. And like, can you imagine drinking, a seltzer or any kind of alcoholic brand in Florida, and you go up to Illinois and it tastes completely different? Like, that's the sign of times that we live in with no interstate commerce.
Right.
All right, let's now jump into headline number 3 and keep the drama flowing in Washington, where Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, I never actually say her full name, aka AOC, said this week that, quote, sounds like a Hail Mary to me when referring to how serious Donald Trump is about his position towards the cannabis industry related to his recent posts on his Truth social media platform. Anthony, does she have a point?
Yes.
Yes? All right. Over to you, Guap.
Yeah. But,
all right.
Now like the other day, like, politicians making big promises right before elections. Shocker, right? Like, it's funny. Twitter's funny because, you can kind of tell who people are voting for, and they desperately want, whenever their candidate says something positive about cannabis or said something in the past about cannabis, they want to believe it 100%. I don't think you can do that with either of these candidates. There's doubts creeping in on whether or not they really mean it or they're really going to do it. But you do have to look at Blumenauer fell into line 2 and said, I don't know what he said. He's been dithering on this since 2016.
Yeah,
doesn't make a difference. I think it does make a difference. We've talked about it. It's putting the it's pushing the narrative forward. It's making the conversation happen. Both candidates are going to have to weigh in on it. I think that's a net positive, and I love to see it. The fact that AOC is saying that Donald Trump's full of shit is obviously not a surprise.
Yeah. Well, she's been a supporter for this, and surprisingly, the psychedelic space as well. But real times, real change. I think she actually had some conversations with Vivek Ramaswamy when he was running for president. But I like the idea of politicians like that, new blood, and looking at the current system that's in place and the changes that need to be made. And she's a disruptor, that's for sure. And love it or hate it, you know who she is and you know where she stands, which actually is a pleasant breath of fresh air when it comes to politicians.
I'm looking at a list of Trump quotes on cannabis, mostly around the 2016 dithering stage, as Blumenauer put it. And one interesting one is I keep hearing over and over, he appointed Jeff Sessions and he rescinded the Cole memo. I get that. And he could have reinstated it. Probably true too. But he was quoted back then, and this is putting me in a very weird position of telling you what Trump said on cannabis. Jeff Sessions needs to stop this. We need to undo this rescinding of the Cole memo. I don't like this. It's something I support, but the cat's out of the bag and it's not going back. We need to move forward. This sounds like something my grandpa said in the 1950s. This is what he said in 2016. So the idea that he kind of like stood by and was like, good move, Jeff, nice, isn't true. But again, words are words. Politicians always be politicking. And action matters way, way more. So hopefully all these words produce action. Yeah.
I was speaking to a few people last night, and, the the narrative around rescheduling, obviously the question is like, what's the timeline look? But everyone I speak to that are, have contacts, like, look, this is something completely separate from a legislation standpoint. This is from executive standpoint, obviously, with the HHS, the DEA, but strongly believe rescheduling is going to happen. It's just a matter of when. When the topic gets brought up about safe banking, it's like going to be delayed. Don't hold your breath. I don't see this happening anytime soon because both parties want it. And as we've said before with Don Murphy on, to get something, you have to give something. And if there's really nothing there and both parties want it, then a lot of people believe that it's just not going to happen in the near term future. But I assume that you probably agree with that, Anthony.
Yeah, I think safe banking is going to happen when no one expects it.
Yeah.
I think it's one day Chuck's going to wake up and he's going to bring it to a floor vote and it's going to pass. I don't think anybody should have any expectations on timing. It's definitely not getting fucking jammed into the farm bill. Like people keep saying, that is not going to happen. I will put my entire professional reputation on that.
All right.
Not happening. I do think it gets done. I don't know when it gets.
Well, there's some numbers that got that. Like we have a $330 trillion economy. Is that correct? I don't know, something around those numbers. And when you put out the grand scheme of things, cannabis is 37 billion. So that puts things into perspective as to how much it's it's not a priority right now. And I hate to say it. We covered this space.
Cannabis is not a priority. It's not. We've got wars going on multiple continents.
It's a non-political vote.
I don't want to get too political either here, but the one thing that neither candidate has said, and it's the elephant in the room, is the national debt. How is that going to be fixed? How is that going to be assessed? And what the hell is going to be the repercussions on a go-forward basis as it relates to the national debt? Because that is the most important thing. And they just keep punting it down the road and nothing is being spoken about it. Like I said, safe will get done when Chuck Schumer has an exchange with another politician that needs to leverage some sort of political capital. And it's like, hey, you scratch my bike, I scratch yours. We finally get this done.
Happy burner. I think it's a priority. How can that debt be fixed, legalized, and tax cannabis, etc.?
I know the U.S.
I'm sorry, but that's just a crazy statement. The national debt, I think, is somewhere in it's $7 to $9 trillion. I think. If you're talking about a $30 billion industry, if you're talking about a $30 billion industry that's taxed at 30%, that's $10 billion a year. It's nothing. It's infinitesimal. It's infinitesimal to the grand scheme of things.
Pay rights. I think we can get a broader descheduling bill before SAFE ever happens.
Yeah.
Why? Explain to me. That's just pure. Yeah, it sounds interesting, and it's a comment. I'm not saying I agree or disagree, but
broader descheduling. I thought you said rescheduling. No. SAFE will happen before descheduling. I'm bullish on rescheduling. I think it's going to happen. I think that the biggest wild card here is how long does this hearing take?
Yeah.
Because the hearing could take weeks, the hearing could take months. If they really wanted to drag it out, the hearing could take over a year. It's all going to be a function of 35 trillion is the current national debt. Thanks, Wolf.
Correct.
Yes, it's a big number. The rescheduling initiative is going to happen as quickly as that hearing gets wrapped up.
I don't know where I was reading this morning, and it was very telling with some of the comments and doctors that took place in the comment period. But it's very telling and promising that, again, everything fully supports and makes everything very strong for when that ALJ hearing does come into play with rescheduling. But anyone I've spoken to that's well connected to Washington have all said very confidently that they do believe rescheduling is a for sure thing. But the question is when. And I know when we had Eric Berlin on a couple of weeks ago, I think the safe bet right now is anytime between, Q2 of next year and then maybe going into like a year from now. And as much as that sounds like, what people don't want to hear, but that's just the reality that we're in right now. Any other comments?
I mean, we just paid $1 trillion in interest on the national debt. We just crossed that threshold. So that's healthy. Talk about healthy balance sheets. that's the reason they don't talk about it. They'd rather us, talk about cats and dogs getting along and eating them than the national debt. So
the best thing that happened from that debate was the AI videos that were created on the cats just preparing for war in Ohio.
That's all the feed that I've gotten. Dana Walden, though. Best friends. Dana Walden, best friends with Kamala Harris. Do you guys know who Dana Walden is?
No idea who that is.
Dana Walden is one of the head
executives
at ABC News, and her husband have donated to every single Harris campaign since 2003.
Let's get to those record sales in those states.
Let's get it. Apology.
Whenever a prize fighter loses, you blame the refs, right?
Yeah. Yeah. You know what? Put all this crap aside. The industry continues to grow, but 6 states just reported hitting their highest ever monthly sales numbers in August. As reported by Marijuana Moment, states included Connecticut, Maine, Maryland, Missouri, and Michigan, which I find interesting, knowing many people were thinking and speculating, would Ohio dip into some of those numbers, especially knowing how Ohio was kicked off back on August 6th. But $294 million reported in the month of August, Anthony. And Ohio went live August 6th, not August 20th or 25th, like early in the month. And this is a state that's averaged around 270. So I'm a little surprised, to say the least, but it's a pleasant surprise and good for them.
Yeah, I mean, it's obvious that the Ohio market is not really detracting from Michigan. Michigan putting up almost a $300 million figure for the month is quite impressive.
Very.
Michigan it's strong. Missouri strong. I think another market that was mentioned in the Marijuana Moment article that needs recognition is New York. Apparently, New York in the month of August hit $97 million in revenue. That's almost at $1 billion run rate. New York is coming. It's not coming fast. It's coming very slowly. But that will be a big market, and that's going to be a potential large growth catalyst for the cannabis sector. And a lot of the companies that we cover do have muted presences that are currently in New York waiting for this growth curve.
Yeah. Promising, to say the least, right? Go up. Nice, strong month of August.
Yeah, I mean, people act when they have like states open across the border. There is definitely some revenue going across the border. But I mean, these are massive states. I mean, people are driving hours, still are driving hours to take advantage of some of the prices on zips in Michigan. So, there is some of that going on, but I'd much rather order it and have it delivered to my house. And if that's not available, I'd much rather drive 15 minutes to my local dispensary than drive 6 hours into Michigan or something like that. So it's not that surprising. And people wanting cannabis more and more, that trend's been going on for a few years. There's a lot of really nice media coverage, mainstream media coverage coming out now. People are starting to really wrap their heads around this. And I love how normalized it's getting.
Yeah, for sure. Maryland, is it a busy tourist state in the month of August? Do you guys know? No idea. Maine, obviously.
Don Murphy would be the right person for that question.
Yeah.
There are some beautiful areas of Maryland. It's God's country out there for sure. But
and I mean, Happy Burner, I'm saying it's not an important issue in the grand scheme of things. If you're talking about the political agenda, the economy, the border, entitlements, foreign policy, like those are things that matter. Inflation, the farm bill at large, where you're talking about the price controls as it relates to the food supply in the United States. No one cares about cannabis. Like, it's not important. Is it a popular societal issue? Yes. Is it polling very popular? Yes. Does it get a ton of social media engagement? Sure. But it's not important. There's a very stark distinction between the two.
Here's a number to back up.
Popular and important.
Debt to GDP ratio is 123%. That's $3 billion a day in interest per day, 1.1 trillion per year. And that is exactly why cannabis right now is not in the grand scheme of things. Wolfie, thanks for the numbers there. I appreciate that. But anyways, 6 states. There you go. Again, they are Maine, Maryland, Missouri, and Michigan. In New York, did I miss actually a couple there? Maine, Maryland, Missouri's 3, Michigan's 4, New York's 5. There's one more I missed.
Connecticut.
Thanks, guys. All right, gents. I'm going to bring you guys back up for Mic Drop with Guap. But now it's time to kick in segment number 2 as we look at some price action this week for the sector and bring in Dan from the chart guys. I like that little. What's going on, my friend? It's been a couple weeks. How was the summer?
Summer's good. Did some traveling. Went out to Oregon in a van for a 1,000-mile loop, and then went to Colorado. Saw some fish. Did some more hiking out there.
What'd you think of Vancouver? Or no, you were in the van. You said you went to
in
Oregon.
Van,
oh,
in
my
Oregon,
apologies. Yeah. We were in Vancouver actually last week, Anthony and I. But oh my gosh, the Northwest up there, especially this time of year, you're not getting a lot of rain. It's sun. Oh my, it's just a slice of heaven to say the least.
That whole chunk, yeah, it's a great spot.
Yeah, so a lot has changed since we last spoke to you about some of the support and attention that Donald Trump has said towards cannabis. And as a result, we've seen some price action for sure on certain days. But let's jump into that because I know we got off to an interesting start because of the late Sunday night tweet or comment that Donald Trump made, basically saying he was going to vote yes on Amendment 3, and then also how we should be looking at safe and rescheduling and all these other things, which caused a buzz for the overall industry first thing Monday. But first chart I want to bring up is Trulieve. And what are you seeing as far as the overall week and how we should potentially close here this afternoon?
Yeah, so bulls are liking it. Again, you know, you're very different perspectives from trader or investor. As a trader, the words Trump said couldn't have been better. And that's all that matters in 2024. Actions will matter if he gets elected down the line. That doesn't matter for me as a trader. What matters are the words leading up into the vote. And so that was obviously a big boost. It's why I've been focusing only on Florida names. You know, I used to be all in MSOS as my play after HHS and all that over the last year. And since this euphoria top and since we started pulling back, it's just a shift. And I now have 0 MSOS and it's now 80% TCNNF and 20% AYRWF as I'm only focused on Florida. Because again, if you're a trader, it makes no sense to be focusing on something that has one dangling carrot of rescheduling or 2 massive dangling carrots, rescheduling and the potential in Florida. I mean, in terms of a short-term catalyst of what can happen, you know, over the next 6 months that would massively change the landscape for an individual company. And again, if it fails, these companies dump and we ditch them instantly. So it's, you know, TCNNF is my main horse and will continue to be it over the last, you know, today it's slightly weaker compared to MSOS, but it's hit an all-time high in relative strength 6 of the last 7 days. And, you know, we just went up 33% straight off the lows, and bulls will take sideways consolidation after that kind of move all day because, you know, the last thing you want to see is a big move up and then you consolidate, but you retrace 30-50% of that move. This is a big move and you're just going sideways and digesting the new range. It's supply and demand, finding a new accepted range. And we are battling a key resistance. 1123 was the highest level that we've seen since the end of May. So highest level in almost 4 months. And that is, you know, where the battle is taking place right now.
100%.
And so we need to turn 1123 into support. If we're going to see another leg up, there's a lack of resistance between that level and 1350. Where things open up a bit. And we can say that, you know, Trulieve is positioned very well if MSOS, we'll look at MSOS more in depth in just a moment, but if they can set a daily high or low here soon, TCNNF is positioned well for it. But, you know, if MSOS struggles here and fades back, it is going to weigh on things a bit.
I know you've said, this is probably a couple months back when we had you on, that you would start to see some of these stocks move and trend as we start to hear early polling numbers. I did speak to Dan Aarons and a few other people here this week about whether they believe in that sort of sentiment. And a lot of the feedback I got is they think these stocks will continue to trade sideways leading up to the election. But in the event Amendment 3 obviously passes or does not, it's going to go one way or the other very quickly.
Well, with respect to anybody that you talk to, I have traded every single vote that has ever taken place in the United States on cannabis. And we have history to go off of. And the history, the best example that pops to my mind is Colorado and Washington. Yep. And the first run up was completely leading up into that vote because the polls were telling us we're going to pass. You know, that night, I was 90% sure that we were going to pass Washington and Colorado. And so it ended up being a short-term sell the news event. And so we run up into the vote, we sell off on the vote. And then there was a surprise. It surprised me where it ran up a good bit on the first day of sales. And that was a bit surprising because it's a known event. We know the day that that's coming. But the reason that we had that second run up, and I'm thinking this was what, 2014. But anyways, the reason we had the second run up was massive media coverage. Everybody was showing the lines, talking about the stores opening, first day of sales. Very different than what we saw in Canada. The media was running up Canada into the first day of sales. This was different. But again, it's every vote that I've seen as the probabilities shift, as we get more data closer to the vote in terms of what the polls are telling us, the market prices that in. So if there's an 80% chance that Florida is going to pass by the time we're, at end of October, then the majority of the initial move is going to be priced in. If there's a 50-50, then it can't be priced in because the market, is unsure. So
right. And numbers are showing right now that they need 60%. I think they're around 62, 63%. But you wonder, what is that number that makes actually stocks to move? And I would think anything probably high 60s and into like 70%. But outside of that, like you said, I think that it's too close for comfort because you never know what might happen on election night. But interesting that, what you outline when Florida and Colorado and states like that for when they went public or live, I should say, how a lot of the stocks performed. But you basically had a run up leading up to the actual night of itself of election night when the votes took place, and then had sell in the news type stuff. So duly noted.
Just a quick note, sorry to cut you off. For anyone that wants to look back at the historical stuff, find the dates of when was the vote and when was first day of sales. And the companies you're going to look back at on the chart are MJNA, HEMP, these junk penny stocks, but that's all there was back then.
Do your due diligence, right? All right, so Trulieve is up now. I think we have Cresco is another Florida player, so let's take a look at them right now.
So weekly chart, chopping around a bit. We've got our tightening range with our low, high of the move. The majority of this bull move was due to, I believe it was MJUS rebalancing things. It gave it all back, but we're just tightening up here. And, the thing that I have to point out is there is no dollar volume whatsoever. Even Trulieve. Trulieve right now, average daily dollar volume. So we're talking, and yes, there's some on the Canadian side, but 370,000 at $10, we'll call it $3.8 million a day trading. That is so insignificant. If you had a higher listed company and there were, rumors that the CEO talked to the potential presidential candidate and we had the positive statement, you'd be putting up $50 million a day of volume easily. And again, it's just, we know, we've heard the story 100 times, access being on the OTC, it's just the dollar volume that it's seeing is so tiny. And Cresco's average 20-day average volume, 440,000 shares at, even let's just call it $2, which we're not even close to. That would be $800,000 a day trading. It's just nothing there. And we will not see any meaningful price movement without an uptick in volume. So part of what I'm looking for in my analysis in terms of how long do I want to hang on to Trulieve and these names is I have to see that average volume trending up. And that's important to be paying attention to, because if the volume's not there, then nothing's going anywhere. And whether it's up or down, significant moves have to have volume behind it. And in the absence of volume, don't expect much to change. You can expect that sideways. So, one part of my thesis of is Trulieve going to run up is we've got to see that volume trending up. And it has trended up a bit. Back in August, the 20-day average is 275,000 shares a day, and now it's 375,000 shares a day. I want to see that 475, 575 as we head into October. But again, we're just not seeing consistent volume. We get the headline, we get the pop, but it very quickly diminishes.
All right. Wolfie writes, compare the dollar volume to 9/9 on Trulieve.
9 to what?
Wolfie, can you maybe elaborate a little bit more on what you mean that compare the dollar volume? You mean September 9th?
It was a high volume day. That's solid volume. That's what we want. Give me that on a daily basis for a pro, like 4 or 5 days. That would stand out significantly. But what happens is, again, it's all retail. So you get retail saying, all right, I'm buying Monday morning on this headline, and they do, and the volume shows up and then it's gone because they bought. And if it's going to be sustained volume, if it's going to be hedge funds or any meaningful capital, you can't buy these names in the first hour of trading on Monday. You have to buy a little bit then. You have to buy a little. It takes such a long time. If I want a $10 million position in Trulieve, it takes me a while to build that position because the liquidity is so low. You can't just market buy and run the price up 20% trying to grab your position. So the lack of volume obviously shows that it's all retail. There's a lack of any meaningful volume at this point, and that has to change.
Yeah, volume has dropped 25 to 50% since Monday, as what Wolfie just outlined. But yeah, that's interesting to say the least. Okay, next charter. We just touched on MSOS, if I'm correct. And what's the fourth company I had down? Was it
Green Thumb? Let me talk about MSOS real quick first.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
So MSOS, again, this weekly lower high pattern has been our guide for the summer slow bleed that we were anticipating and that we got. It was a weekly lower high here, and then another weekly lower high at 820, double top 819, another weekly lower high at 780. And again, we can very easily just set another weekly lower high here. So when I see a chart like this, I just make a simple statement. Absolutely nothing changes from complete bear control. And those of you that have been watching my videos know that I've literally made the same statement for the last 4 months. Absolutely nothing changes from complete bear control if we're just setting weekly lower highs. So if we're not going to break 780 on this move, right now it's looking like another weekly lower high may shape up. If next week rolls around and we drop down into the 660s, 650s, we'll have a new weekly lower high, and 724 will be our new benchmark level. But these weekly lower highs have been forming for 4 months, and nothing changes as long as that is the case.
Okay. GTI, they had some news this week, and they look to increase and expand their Florida footprint, but let's stay on the narrative of Florida players.
So again, I've just been making the same statement here for months as well. If weekly, this red line is the weekly EMA 12. If that is resistance, nothing changes from full bear control. And you look at every week, it's almost every single week. We're looking at 80% of the weeks of the last 4 months have rejected from this level, and the high of this week is right off of it again. So again, there's just nothing changing about this chart whatsoever if we keep setting these lower highs. And I love how Trulieve is trading. I love my positioning for it, but I'm very well aware that if MSOS continues its weekly downtrend with just another lower high, it's going to drag it down, even if it's unfair. That's just the mechanics of this sector because of the dollar volume that the ETF sees being the only higher listed thing there. So I'm well aware that that can throw a wrench in my game plan of a Trulieve bull move into the vote.
Everything starts and ends with the ETF, right? Want to bring up too, Midnight actually writes, and I find this an interesting stock because they have got some unbelievable IP. Last one, psychedelic company MindMed, that according to Midnight, looks like he sold his position before the summer began, and the stock is down to $6 now. But I hear nothing but a credible feedback on the way this company is being directed and the people behind it, regarding to the trials that they have and the people that are behind it. But what are we seeing right now, Dan?
So yeah, we looked at this back then. The hold of 7 was great. The move up was great. And again, you got to sell some into strength. So just to go back into how I played this, I missed the initial move. I added the daily higher low. I sell some in the $9 range, and then I stop out. Break even. I made no money on that trade, but I also lost no money when we gave it all back. So that's that way. If you're trading these sectors, as we know, you must sell into bull moves, at least partial, to get your cost basis nice and comfy. And then if it drops back to your cost basis, you can then protect yourself from bag holding and from red positions. So it looked great, and then it rolled over. And we had the bearish headline of I forget which government 3-letter whatever negated or said no to MDMA for
FDA
for PTSD. So that was a big hit for the sector. And, we're just finally shifting momentum again. So again, just supply and demand. What happens here? Okay. Bearish headline, supply is outweighing demand significantly. Then the scales start to balance when you're in this new price range. Okay, we've got fair value of supply and demand. And now the scales are trying to tilt a little bit with demand now trying to exceed supply. So here we are hitting, the highest level in 3 weeks. Granted, it's not a huge bull move, but this is how support gets established. And we can now say, all right, we had a low of 561, 562, 569. So clearly we now have a new base of support in the 560s. That is a level in the market where buyers said this is a fair value of what we're willing to pay. And now we look for how much of this weekly bounce can follow through. There's tons of space for a lower high compared to 983. If you're a bull, you want to see 50% of this drop made back on the bounce, which means you got to head up over $7. So there's a lot of work to do. We could say there's a short-term shift, and now it's just a question of how much follow-through can bulls put together here. And again, the broader stock market having a really solid week this week, a little bit more risk-on mindset after fear last week, and that's going to be important as well for these sectors. But as of right now, MNMD, at least we have a new support level to go off of. The downside when you're rediscovering new price levels is you don't know where that bottom is going to be. And then now we do know that is the bottom. And now that's a level that I can play off of for any trades and calculate my risk very clearly. If this level breaks, I would want to be out. I can have this position size to risk this much. Once you have those levels, it's much easier to develop trade game plans around.
Well, I think that industry is about to actually enter a new era. Actually, I was surprised this week to learn that there's a number of public companies that are going public on the NASDAQ within the next 6 months. It's kind of like the new phase of the industry that a lot of companies that did go public. Orange, you can bring down the charts now and maximize our windows. But you're about to enter into a new era for this space. And I know it did have an effect with the FDA declining MDMA last month. However, it has nothing to do with a lot of these companies and the trials that they're conducting right now. And again, commercialization is not going to take place for a lot of these companies for at least another 2 to 3 years. And I think that's just the investor sentiment right now, that you have to just wait more and longer. And we all know what that's like, and it's going to be frustrating. But when you look at it, now that the news is now wore off, I think investors really have to look at this space right now, look at key companies and realize that whatever they're doing has no effect whatsoever on why the FDA declined MDMA, with which was submitted by Lycos Therapeutics. But MindMed definitely is a company that a lot of people are liking with the IP that they're developing. But as usual, to get information, more information from you, follow at the Chart Guys, or is it at Chart Guys? My apologies.
At Chart Guys on Twitter.
My apologies. And your YouTube channel is Chart Guys as well. Anything interesting you have? Workshops coming up?
We got a Chart Guys meetup here in North Carolina at the end of the month. So we're going to have, 30, 40 people fly in from around the country. That's always a good time. Going to do some saunas and cold plunging and cookouts and all that fun stuff.
Sweet. All right. Well, listen, great to have you back. Summer's over, and we'll get back to these weekly routines.
All right. Good to see you.
All right. Thank you, sir. All right. Let's bring up back Mr. Varel. And thought that was interesting with what he said, just with regards to some of the trends in the past related to the states of Colorado when they had their votes. But if you really had to predict a number where you could see these stocks start to move leading into election night, like what would that percentage of number be? Like 64% right now is just too close, give or take. But do you need to see 70% in order for these stocks to really start to make a move prior to the election?
I don't think they make a move prior to the election
at all.
No.
Wolfie actually made a point too that volume's down 25-50% since Monday. And
I mean, if you talk about A3 passing, A3 passes November 5th. It gets implemented June 1st.
Yeah.
There's a long road ahead.
Yeah, I hear you.
There's still a lot of opacity around rescheduling.
Yeah.
I could be very wrong here, and I'm obviously being contrarian for once, but I don't think stocks move going into the election.
Well, you made some good points. It all starts and ends, as we've said before, with that ETF MSOS. And if it's reaching, new high lows, it's obviously going to drag down the entire industry, as we all well know with the way this industry trades. But that's it. Now time for segment number 3. Let's cue the music and let's bring up the shades as Mr. Bake is here. It's Friday, Friday midday. Mic drop. Miss Guap.
Happy high noon on Friday, everybody. A sonnet about the hemp industry.
Let's hear it.
All the cannabis industry, really. In California's sun-kissed land of gold, a ban on hemp with THC was told. A move to shield the young, the state proclaimed. Yet in its wake, a storm of voices claimed that hemp, once hailed for freedom, now confined, a plant of peace in legal chains entwined. The governor's decree, a swift, sharp blade. Against the tide of green, a stand was made. But in this act, a deeper tale unfolds of industries and powers, stories untold. The hemp, a symbol caught in a legal fight, its fate now sealed by California's might. Oh, hemp, thy journey's fraught with ban and strife. Yet in the hearts of many, all cannabis is life.
Well said.
Remember, we all love the same plant. It's not everything is verses and enemies and battles. I really do see a scenario where some of these hemp companies have been making a lot of money. They could put it to good use by, instead of looking out for their best interests and the MSOs looking out for their best interests. I really do. I know, call me a dreamer. I do think that
dreamer.
They could all march on DC and Million Blunt March and also put some lobby money together and get some common sense reform done. Wouldn't that be nice?
You know, it'd be even nicer. We get a little yes on 3.
Yeah, that is.
We'll take your calls.
I tweeted out. I think you're doing something right when your opposition has to resort to misinformation campaigns, aka lying. I mean, the stuff here is freaking crazy.
What a show here, boys.
The misinformation in Florida is nuts. And I mean, hemp and cannabis companies do need to come together. I think they are going to wind up coming together.
Yeah, I agree.
The CEO of Cornbread Hemp, which is a pretty big company, had a pretty good article yesterday. But the thing is bringing together the two industries, it's not going to happen on the hemp industry's terms. No one from the cannabis industry is going to sit here and say, yes, we need to come together. We need to create an alliance, but you're going to have your cake and eat it too and still get to reap the benefits of interstate commerce and use credit cards while we're getting impaled by 280E and just the onerous regulations around the state-run businesses. That's right. At least I'm not speaking from a point of leadership in one of the businesses, but that's never going to happen.
Yeah, it's kind of like a be careful what you wish for, right? If you want to be lumped in, you're going to have to play by the same set of rules, and you might not like the rules compared to the rules now. If you're a good operator and you're one of these good actors, you kind of want what's best for the plant, and you're willing to play on a even field. That's different, but a lot of folks are not.
Here's the thing: you're talking about a multi-billion-dollar industry right now that's built on direct-to-consumer and interstate commerce.
Yeah,
it's going to get blown up if it gets regulated the same as cannabis.
Garns, we got any explosion? We got any explosion sounds?
Yeah,
that's
and
the problem.
It sucks. I know we're going off about hemp again, but I mean, it sucks because it is giving access to a lot of people that don't have it. I'll give you that. But it's also putting products in the hands of people, untested products or under-tested products in the hands of people, which isn't a great look. So part of me loves the fact that it's giving us a preview of what the cannabis sector could look like. They're taking credit cards, they're shipping it to your door. It's product selection prices are good, like all these things. But really, some of the ways they're able to do that aren't the best, and you don't want to put some of that stuff in your body.
No, I don't think banning synthetics across the board is a win. That's not a win.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, D9 and THCA are still just allowed to flourish unencumbered. That's not a win for anybody involved. And the music stops.
No, music's still going. It just keeps on
music
going.
Never stops, Anthony.
All right. Leave some comments, smash some like buttons for us, folks, as well. Please leave some comments below. I'm actually headed to Washington on Monday night. I'm going to be at Don Murphy. Guap, you'll meet me there. We're going to be there all day Tuesday and Wednesday next week. We're doing a live stream from Capitol Hill on Wednesday. Any questions or topics that you guys want us to cover while we're at both speaking with Congress and speaking with, obviously, the different senators. But we're going to just get an update and see how things are progressing. Obviously, there's a lot of things that they're going to have on their plate, but the most important thing is just Also, speak to some of these sponsors of the Safe Banking Bill and ask them if they're actually aware of what bill it actually is. That was still mind-boggling from earlier this week. But Anthony, you're going to be speaking at a panel at Florida State University next Wednesday, which would be amazing, incredible. So good luck with that. What is that all about?
Business of Cannabis.
Nice.
It's at the FSU Business School.
That's great.
It's the Business of Cannabis and Amendment 3.
Sweet.
I for one, cannot wait to see the faces of some GOP senators when you tell them Trump's position on cannabis and then ask, what's your stance? That's going to be gold.
I'm
over.
I randomly, my dream would be to randomly run into Christina Pashaw and Governor DeSantis somehow in downtown Tallahassee at the Governor's Club.
Oh, there you
I've been
go.
to several times.
Bring a camera. You could.
There's no cameras in the Governor's Club.
Well,
They
like
might
to
be
walk.
regretting their stance right about now.
They like to walk on the street, as you know, in Washington. But I don't. Well, whatever. Good luck in Tallahassee. Find out what's going on with their football program too. And to all the Village Farms fans out there, we will get content out at some point next week. But be patient with us. There's a lot of work. We didn't realize how much content we filmed, but there's over 2 hours of content. And the first draft that we have is an hour-long video. But we're looking to slice that up, which is a few changes that we'll be making. But we'll keep you posted. Feel free to reach out anytime. And as usual, make sure to smash that like button, share this video with your network, and make sure to subscribe to our daily Baked In newsletter, which is in the comment section here. A lot of great information that we have pertaining to some of the latest news from Washington about this amended farm bill based on the network that we have. So if you can, make sure to subscribe if you haven't done so already. Gents, enjoy the rest of your weekend. This is a long podcast, over an hour, but appreciate the time, and we'll see you guys back here on Monday afternoon.
Yep. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Let's ban prohibitionism.
Hey everyone, thanks for watching our latest podcast. Lots of momentum building. You guys getting all excited? Leave comments below. Again, we want to take this viral. Smash that like button and make sure to click on that bell for all notifications as we start to bring on bigger and bigger guests. Don't forget to subscribe to our daily newsletter, the Baked In newsletter, by logging on to thedalesreport.com. And we want to take this viral, as I said, and make this community grow. So make sure to subscribe on that channel because we wouldn't be here without you. Thanks again, everyone, for watching.